Okay, so this week on the Manifesting Me show, the topic is the way of thinking of how did I phrase this? Enough of the just making do with way of thinking, right? Like, oh, I can make do with this, or that will be fine, or I don't need that. Those are the types of statements and thoughts that at least I have noticed for myself and in my life, how the just make do with way of thinking shows up. And that really, when you boil it, at least a good part of that, or at least an underlying factor of that way of thinking, I think comes from a lack mentality, or having a lack way of thinking, if you will, right? A lack mentality, I think, sums it up. And that also shows up in different aspects of our life. We might not have this all across the board in our lives, at least, again, like from my experiences and what I've seen and talked about with other people, it shows up at different times in our lives. It shows up in different aspects in our lives and different ways. So just like most topics that I talk about on the podcast, I'm sure I will be revisiting this again in the future and talking about it in a different aspect or from a different perspective. So if you have experiences or questions or thoughts about this, please feel free to share them with me. And they may be ideas, or they may be prompts for future episodes, because nothing is ever a one and done, I don't think, really, in this sense. We revisit topics, we learn, we experience them in different ways. So I really think it's also important to look at them from the different ways and to talk about them from the different perspectives, not just mine always, but maybe something that you guys bring up or share or inspire me in a way to talk about. So definitely share your questions, your thoughts, things you would like to know more about on this topic, or any topic that, that I talk about, or that you're interested, that relates to manifesting, becoming the person who is already living the life and having the experiences that you want to be having. And we'll just keep this conversation going, down the line. So let me look at my notes here. So some of the ways, and I did put that a lot of this, I shouldn't say applies, but women primarily, I think, tend to take on that lack way of thinking, or like just making do. And again, that shows up in different ways. I am not a person who has children, but I have seen this in people, friends, and family, and just in general, with women who are moms, that with the thinking that they need to put their family first, and that they need to make do with less or have less of, so that their children or family or whatever, whoever they are taking care of or helping or providing for, that they can have more. And I think that's admirable. And I know I have done that for different people in my life as well. Even though I'm not a mom, I can see how that plays out. And that is very admirable. And I want to start shifting the thought process to, yes, they can have, and the people, the children, whoever, it is great that we want more for them, that we want them to have all the things. And it is also okay and right and appropriate and a good thing for us women to say, and us too. And a lot of times, and us first, because it ties back to that way of thinking of put your mask on first, right? So that then you can help other people put the mask on. And that's such a common example, but I think most people are familiar with that. And so taking care of yourself first, becoming that person, and learning how and finding the ways for you to have the abundance, for you to have a plentiful mentality, an abundant mentality, and pass that along to those that you care for, to your family, to your friends, to society, and say, it's okay. And it's actually a good thing because there really is plenty to go around. Sometimes it shows up in different ways and at different times, and there's an ebb and flow, but there is plenty. And so getting into plentiful and abundant thinking is where this conversation is ideally and hopefully leading or helping to open the thought process, start changing that thought process, right? So a lot of times it is primarily, not always, not always, but primarily women that have this thought process. And also someone that I work with pointed this out to me. I had not seen this, but advertising and things that are marketed towards men and women also have that underlying message of the women need to make do with and the men don't. And the example that was shared with me when it was pointed out is like, if you look at magazines or articles, and magazines for men very often are the things to help you move forward, like invest in these top 5 stocks, or 5 ways to start a business, or 5 things that actually move and like expand, right? The expansion, the possibility, the plentiful type of mentality. And then where you look at articles or magazine stories, you're thinking it's like, 5 ways to make dinner on a budget, 5 simple ingredients, and I use 5 because that's often a number used in those articles or stories. But see that, so it's not like blatant. It's not like, you need to make do with less because you're female or identify as female, and you can make do with more, or can have more because you have that male energy or that male identity or something along those lines. But it's little subtle things like that. And that's why there's no judgment for having that thinking, because we're so accustomed to it. So I'm here today as one of the things is to help bring awareness to the ways that it shows up and to start catching it, because that's really the first step. Learning what it looks like, getting familiar and catching it, so that then the process becomes reframing it, doing the work and changing that way of thinking, changing the way that we look at things like that, so that none of us, male, women, men, women, children, none of us need to have that lack or make do with way of thinking. So that is a long-winded way of saying that I would like to start changing that way of thinking and that conversation. So, like I said, since it's primarily women, that's what I am a woman. I identify with that. I experience those things. So that's what I'm focusing on today. But if there are other aspects and other ways that you see it show up, please share it with me. I am always looking to get someone else's perspective and learn and open up my way of thinking and my experience with thought processes. So lowering expectations, some ways that this shows up is lowering of expectations. Don't expect too much, right? Don't expect too much so that you won't be disappointed. That can be across the board, but don't expect too much of this person. Don't expect too much of this relationship. Don't expect too much of this experience. Just lowering our expectations in whatever way that language or that thought, that way of thinking shows up. Lowering of expectations. And I touched on it at the beginning, putting other people first, which really puts us down. And we don't see it that way. And that's not how it's talked about. We see it as like, I'm going to put someone else first, or help lift them up, or help take care of them. But that also depletes us when we are not also filling our reserves and taking care of ourselves first, so that we can then be there for the other people. And that ties into self-care, and that ties into financial literacy and education. So it really all ties together. It's kind of this circuit, if you will, right? It shows up in different ways, and it goes around, and it applies to different aspects of our life. And one of the stories, the examples, I like to share some examples, metaphors, if you will, ways to kind of wrap our brains around this, I like to share stories and examples. And one of the stories or examples that I came up with is I've experienced this conversation with two different friends of mine. And so think about like car collections, right? How many car collectors do you know of, whether they're celebrities or you know them in person? And I think the ones that I know of, celebrity wise, I don't know any personally, are men, right? Here in California, I mean, it was a national show, but Jay Leno is a comedian, and it is very well known that he has a very extensive car collection. And there are those TV shows like Car Repairs and not recycling, upgrading, and different like the old vintage cars, and there is a word like to bring them back to life basically, and I cannot think of that word. Restoration, see, restoring them. And so having this car collection of restored cars and looking for that, most of the people that I am aware of that have car collections are men. And so the first time I had this conversation with a friend of mine, she is a fellow business owner, entrepreneur, and she was saying, I would love to have like 5 different cars, right? And not as a collection, but for different purposes. And so for the examples were like, I'd like to have this type of car for when we go camping so that it's off-road and it's okay for it to get dirty and it has more space than than my everyday car that I would drive around, just around town, errands, to and froing type of thing. And then I would like to have a larger car, like a van type or an expedition or something that holds multiple people, because she plans and hosts events. And so she's like, taking groups of people to things, or picking, groups of women up at the airport for these events that she holds and things along those lines, and making it more convenient. So I'd have that car, but I wouldn't want to drive that car every day. Then I'd have like my fun zipping around kind of, fun, dream car, if you will, or whatever. So there was because it was 5. So it's like, I would love to have 5 of these. And so we were talking about that, and it's like, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But initially we're like, but do we really need them? Or like, which one would be the best that could be multi-use and not be, like not having to drive the big SUV or van around all the time? What could be like a mid-range? And it's like, why the hell are we trying to limit ourselves? And that was a way of making do, this make do with way of thinking. Why the hell not? Can we have 5 cars or 8 cars or even our own car collection? Just because we want it, just because it would be fun. What are the reasons that guys have the car collections? Because they love the cars, because they have memories, maybe because they've worked on cars, whatever the case is. So why not start changing that and not making do with? Finding ways of, like, when we catch ourselves, that is a way to catch yourself. It's like, oh, but what really could be practical? Practicality is one of the key indicators. There are, of course, plenty of circumstances where practicality is appropriate, but not always. So that's a place to check in. Where am I thinking too practically? Where am I holding back my dreams and desires and not dreaming big, and instead looking at a practical solution or a more practical desire or wish, right? So practicality is one of the ways that you can check in when you catch yourself doing that. And so I had a second conversation with a friend referencing that, and she's like, because she was in a car accident, and thank goodness she was fine, no serious injuries, but she needed to get a new car. And she was like, I don't know what I want, because there's so many cars that I would like. And so we again brought up this car collection, and why don't women have car collections, and why is it always just like the one that best suits the needs overall? or making do with something else, and occasionally like maybe renting another car or using someone else's. Why not us? Whoever is in this like practical or making do, why not us? Every single person is entitled to their dreams. Yes, we all have to do the work, and yes, we all have to put the time in, but every single one of us is worthy of and entitled of having as much of anything as we want, as many homes, as many cars, as many clothes, and not limit ourselves because other people say we should, or because of what other people might think that we're being too extravagant or wanting too much. If you have the desire, there's a reason for that. And go ahead, go on with your bad self and do the things, become the person to have it, plenty of it, all of it, more than enough of it. And by all, I don't mean like hoarding it from other people. Just have all the things and all the stuff that, the experiences that you want. There is absolutely no reason to hold ourselves back or to say that we should be making do with. So one of the things that that I have experienced personally in this, that I have noticed in becoming aware and doing this work for myself and changing the way of thinking and those thoughts that I have, it's like, oh, well, instead of having, I don't know, as a kid, because I started thinking about examples going back. Instead of having, I don't know, the nicer pair of shoes, it's like, oh, well, just, these are fine. They're knockoffs, or they're this, or they're just more practical, or having hand-me-downs instead. And in and of themselves, there is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with knockoffs. It's when it comes to holding yourself back. Like there are plenty of, let's say like grocery store brands of things that I love. But when you find yourself saying, oh, I should get only the lesser brands or the lesser known brands because it saves money, or because there really is no need to get that thing. If you like one versus the other and are able to get it, why hold yourself back? Why punish or limit yourself? Because that's how this lack mentality builds on itself as well. And so there are plenty of things that I love, the general store brands, and there are plenty of other things that, I want the name brand, or I want the full size thing, or I want, because it tastes better. It has a little bit of a different taste, and just something that simple. Why go for something that I don't like the taste as much of just to make do? Because I can make do with. I also saw that it showed up in my life with many things that I bought at the store or ordered or whatever the case was, saying, let's say I wanted a certain type of shelving, right? Like a certain type of shelving is an example I'm thinking of. And what I had in mind, I either couldn't find right away, or it was maybe a little bit higher price point. And I would find something either at the store, or I'd see something close, but not quite right online, or even coming across things at when you're going thrifting. I used to love going to the thrift stores with my Nana. She got me hooked on going to thrift stores. And a lot of times there's like, oh, I was looking for something like this, but I guess I could make this work. That's another one of those key phrases. I guess I could make this work. Now, again, there are two sides. There's always two sides. There are times where like, I can make this work and it will be great, right? But again, it's when you're holding yourself back, not when it's helping you move forward or helping you achieve a certain thing, or you're using something in a different way than it was intended. And I guess I can make this work, or this is close enough. This should be fine. And then I get it home and it really is not, or was not, the thing that I wanted. The shelving didn't hold the right number of things, or it wasn't the right size, and it didn't fit all the things that I wanted on it or in them. Then I started developing this pile of stuff I don't want to say junk because it was usable, but it's not what I wanted or not what I was looking for. And I was making do or saying, oh, this is not quite what I need, but I guess for now, right? For now I can use it until I can afford the other one, until I can get something and whatever. If I had just waited until I found the ones I wanted, or not spent the money on the lesser cost that wasn't quite right, I would have had all of the things, in not too long a time, just holding out and saying, yes, I'm worthy, or this is actually what I want. I don't want to make do with that, right? And on experiences, I mean, there are so many different aspects that we could talk about this where we hold back and make do. And so I just want to today, in today's conversation, to get you to start noticing where you are making do, where the make do with thinking shows up in your life, and become aware of it. Simply become aware of it and say, hey, I'm catching that. How can I reframe that? Or how could I look at that differently? Or what is a different statement that I can make? Or do I really need to? Is there a genuine need for me to make do with, right? Every circumstance, every person, every situation is going to be different. So that's also one of the, I guess, kind of things I want to include is nothing is going to be across the board. So getting curious, looking at each circumstance or each thing or each situation that it shows up in, and looking at it and questioning and saying, hey, is this make do with mentality, or is this something that is okay, where I'm not holding myself back, where this is applicable, or there is no significant difference between the two, or I'm not making do with so that someone else can have instead of me? Why don't we start thinking someone else can have and I can have, or I can have and someone else can have, right? So making that connection and bringing the awareness. And recently, I don't know if I'm going to do an episode about this or share a post or a story or maybe just do an extra live somewhere. I recently joined a club. It's an activities club, a social club. But what they do is you join and it's like a monthly membership fee type of thing that you pay every month. And then what they do is you tell them the dates, you pick dates that you're available throughout the month, and then the types of activities that you are willing or interested in trying, and then they schedule them for you. And you do have to say, yes, I can go, or confirm that you're available. And they do everything for you. They get the reservations or buy the tickets, and they tell you when it is. They tell you what to wear, like what type of an event or an activity it is. And then trying new things. This is my way of doing things differently because the future me is having really cool experiences. And one of the things holding me back was, well, I will be able to do these things. And it's a way of making do. So I was like, I will be able to do these things when I have more time to actually research them and plan them and look into them and find these really cool activities. So I was not doing these fun things, or not as many fun things, because I was holding myself back because of, I don't have the time to research and plan these things right now. Well, thank the universe. Here comes this opportunity, this club. And I'm like, oh, hey. And what was my first thought? Oh, do I really need to pay that? I could do these things on my own. I could, but have I done this on a consistent, regular basis up until this point? No, I have not. So, but see, we're so used to, this is what I've been looking for. And even when we find the thing we're looking for, it's like, oh, but really is now the right time? Or should I, or shouldn't I? Or, oh, what would people think? Or whatever the case is. And so I was sharing that story with a family member. What they said was, oh, but there's websites where you can find free things. Yes, there are. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. But this is me stepping into future version of Patty that just does these cool fucking things, right? That just does them and doesn't apologize for wanting to do them, doesn't apologize for trying new things, and not making do with looking for only the free activities that I can do or free websites that I still have. There's still maybe events you have to pay for to participate in, but doing more of the legwork. No, because in my vision of myself, I'm doing these things and I very readily and very willingly pay for the convenience of someone else planning it for me. And then I decide whether I want to show up, if it's a thing I want to try or do, or if I'm available that day. That is me up leveling and becoming and stepping up into that version of me who that's the way I do things. That is something that is valuable to me. Them planning it, putting it in front of me and saying, is this good or not good? Yes. Not everybody. Some people love the research part of it. Some people love the, doing the research and finding it and all things. Great. I'm not that person because up until now, I have seen that I have not done those really cool things. And I went on the first activity this past weekend and I went whale watching. I live in Southern California in the LA area. And so I went whale watching and it's just like, I don't know, like hit me over the head with like, I have lived in California most of my life. I've left California on a couple different occasions for several years and come back. So the majority of my life, I have lived in California. And I was familiar with the whale watching, that's something that was available here and that people did, and have said to myself, that would be cool to do. Did I ever actually book a whale watching trip, or did I ever go to the marina and go on a trip? No, I did not. But now I have, because I said, the club said, hey, we got you booked. This is available on this day. Is this something you want to do? Yes. Great. I went. I had a great time. I got some cool video of dolphins, right? I talked to some really, nice people, and I was out of the house and I did a fun, cool activity that was out of my normal routine. So now that's going to become normal for me. Every month, they will set me up on an activity, and that opens up so much more, fun, opens up meeting new people, opens up creativity and exploration and all the things that I love. And I'm pretty proud of myself for stepping up and saying, yes, I'm doing this. And I actually didn't look for others' opinions before doing that. I said, this sounds like fun. I talked myself through it and said, yes, I'm worthy of it. Yes, I deserve it. And simply, I want to do it. And so I did it. So if you follow me on social medias anywhere, I will be sharing those adventures. And I love to journal, creative journal and memory keep. So now I will have regular opportunities to do that as well. And so last thing that I want to share with you guys before wrapping this episode up is the concept that a lot of us are familiar with. To get different results, we need to do things differently. I'm sure you've heard that in some version, or, if not, that's a factual statement. To get different results, to have different things in what we have right now, circumstances, we need to do things differently. And a lot of times, I think, because I have thought this way, we think they need to be like big, huge changes that we need to make. That also holds us back because, I'm not ready to make those big changes, or, the time's not right, or, it feels too daunting. It feels too overwhelming to make these big changes to get different results. So what I want to point out here is doing things differently sometimes means these things that I'm going to list out for you. It means simply using different words, thinking thinking differently, changing the way you think about things, being open to new perspectives, new ways of looking at things. Thinking differently, looking at things differently, and learning to ask yourself different questions than, do I really need this? Well, do I want this? Could be a better question. So changing the focus of the questions, the quality of the questions will get you different results. It will help you see things differently. It will help you come up with different answers. And the first one that I talked about, using different words in line with this make do with way of thinking that I've been talking about today. One of the things I noticed, that a word that I used very frequently in my speaking and in my thinking, was the word expensive. Oh, that's too expensive. Oh, or even if it's not something that I was looking for, just looking at the price of like, oh, dang, that's expensive, and just like, it's like, even if it wasn't something I wanted to get, just that thought, like, oh, like it's too much, like, oh, that's a high price. And really, in the work that I've done on this and, working through this and exploring this, is like, I personally cannot change the price of other things. Other people set their service prices. The gas prices are what the gas prices are. If you're not from California, I know there are other parts of the country that probably have very high gas prices, and that's what they are. They go up, they go down, things change. Are they fair? Probably not. But can I personally change those things? I cannot change the prices. What I can do is change or control what I do. Do I want to pay the gas prices? Do I want to take an Uber instead sometimes? Do I want to take public transportation? Or simply say that's what they are. And if I want to go have a car and drive it, I'm going to need to put gas in it. Instead of complaining or focusing on how high they are, well, how can I change my thinking, which would change my energy, which could change my perspective, and say, hey, okay, the gas price is what it is, but I want to go do that thing, so I need gas. Okay, let's go get it. Let's do it. I cannot change the prices of things, but I can change the words that I use to talk about them. And one of those changes is not using the word expensive. And when I catch myself by default thinking or saying the word it's expensive, changing those. And some examples of changing that is, well, if it's something that is not a priority for you, it's like, that's just say that it's not a priority for me right now. So it's not that I'm doing without, or I am doing without, or I'm not getting that thing, but it's not a priority because I have other priorities, other values that currently do not align with that. Saying that's not on the agenda right now, but I look forward to when it is, right? The cost is something that I can't, and it sounds kind of phony at first, and it sounds kind of like, well, that just sounds weird, really. It's like, that's just not a priority, or it's not important, or I'm not worried about it. And every circumstance will be different, but those are maybe some ideas to help you generate a different way of looking at cost and the way that things are. It's up to us. We can only control ourselves, how we think about things, how we speak about things, and how we react to things, right? So how can you shift out of lack mentality by choosing different words? Where are you finding words that have low energy for you? Like thinking of, oh, that's too expensive brings an energy to me of, oh, but I can't have it, or, oh, it's too much. And so it does not bring a good energy for me. So what are those words for you? Notice them. Start paying attention, notice them, like, oh. And now that you're aware and that you, if this is something that you're going to do intentionally, you will start noticing them simply by having this awareness brought to you. It's like, oh, how can I change that energy? What's a different statement I can make? What is a different word I can use? What is a different perspective? And that's a sample of different questions that you can start asking yourself to change the way you look at things. So again, it all ties together, and I will definitely be revisiting this topic and this way of thinking again, because like everyone else, I'm human, and I address something, I work on something, I experience it again in another way. So let me know your experiences. Let me know what phrases you catch yourself saying and thinking, and that you will start to reframe. And if you need help with the reframing, share that in the comments or send me an email or whatever the case is. And let's help each other change the verbiage, change the energy by using different words, and changing our thinking from lack to plentiful and abundant thinking. So that's what I have for you guys today. Coming up, we have a new moon coming up soon. So if you're interested in working with the moon, the lunar cycle, to help you become this person, this is something that I do. And I have a program called Manifesting Me with the Moon that really focuses on working with the lunar cycle to help you become that version of yourself who is experiencing the life that you want to be experiencing, and up-leveling the things that are fabulous by using the new moon and the zodiac sign that the moon is in to help you set intentions. And then you get ongoing support and coaching with the program. Ongoing. You pay for the program once, and then you get ongoing support and coaching on a monthly basis as long as the program lives or is in existence in that format. And once you have the course, you also get automatic upgrades, and any additions that I make, you automatically get them. There is no upgrade fee or anything along those lines. And if you have questions about that, please send them to me by message, on comments. And if you want to email me your questions, the email is vision, VISION, @bluemoonmanifestations.com. And that's what I have for you guys today. I will talk to you soon. Take care.